Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Thursday, June 9th, 2016, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, our reporters are detained at Bilderberg, which according to some media outlets does not exist. Then, what's a realistic scenario for what would happen if food stamps stopped working? After that, guest star Obama says that politics is not a reality TV show. And the incredible response border residents gave to the prospect of the wall. That's next.
This is pretty shocking stuff. So you send a liberal journalist down there, he comes back saying, Trump is right.
That's right. So we said, you got to go down there with no preconceived notions, right? Just an empty notebook, go to my former home state, or my, and walk the border, drive the border 800 miles and talk to whoever you see and let them tell us what they think about what's really going on and whether we need a wall, in fact, instead of hearing it from the debate stage.
Well, the official beginning of the Bilderberg meeting has begun today, and our INFOWARS reporters are there on the ground. We're going to be playing some of their reports coming up later in the segment, but now Bilderberg has been exposed. It's been forced now into the international news. Our story was the top article there on the Drudge Report, as well as we have many other mainstream media outlets having to cover this event. Now, a lot of them are kind of taking the talking points directly from the Bilderberg's own website, but at least we have finally got them to begin talking about this meeting of elites. Now, coming up in the next few segments, we'll be checking in with our reporters who are there on the ground. And of course, you'll hear their story of how they've been detained. Imagine that they were in Germany. They demanded their papers, please. But we'll definitely be getting a lot more reports coming out of Germany. Now, this is a top story coming from Kit Daniels. He's reporting on the food stamp outage that could trigger nationwide riots. Apparently, thousands, if not millions, of people who are on food stamps haven't gotten any of their benefits. It's 9 days into the month now, and they say it's due to, quote, glitches in the electronic benefit transfer system. But many Americans are worried that if this outage continues, mass civil unrest will erupt. There is a website that reports on these glitches, downdetector.com, and they are just all over. The boards are lit up talking about, this is going to get really crazy. All you need is a little spark, and what's better to fuel rioting than a lot of hungry people who are just trying to feed their families. So we reported in 2013 about the administration and how they had a goal to dramatically increase food stamp enrollment in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And, they've encouraged mass dependency on the welfare system. So they're basically ensured nationwide rioting at the flick of a switch when there is a large-scale collapse on the food stamp program. So many people are dependent on this. So this corresponds with a strategy called pressure from above and below, and it's when the government deliberately creates problems, and then they offer solutions that only expand government powers at the expense of individual rights. So this is incredibly frightening, and just more credence to the idea that you need to be taking care of yourselves, figuring out how to grow food for your own family, and don't put yourself at the mercy of a government who will decide that they want to play with you and your family's life. Now, the feds can't even fund the welfare program that it sought to dramatically increase. Here's another fail. They can't pay for this disastrous Obamacare program. Now, some leading senators are seeking to stop the Obama administration. They're wanting to provide some health insurers with a $2.5 billion taxpayer-funded bailout. This is under a provision in the Affordable Care Act. So the senators are now petitioning their colleagues on key committees, and they're ensuring that we are not going to have to foot the bill for the excess costs that have been incurred by insurance companies who've been selling low-cost coverage under the Obamacare program. We knew this was going to be a disaster. We knew the only people that were going to be signing up were people who were incredibly sick and needed this, but the young people who are having to foot the bill, the young healthy people, just weren't going to sign up, even with making it a federal mandate. So this is centers around a contested Obamacare provision known as risk corridors. And a lot of Republican senators have been trying to fight against this risk corridor provision for the last 2 years. The federal government compensates insurance companies if they wind up with larger costs as a result of selling cheap insurance policies to unhealthy individuals under Obamacare. So they knew that was going to happen, so they wrote the provision right in. And that's not it. Obama, I don't know, he's leaving legacies left and right. that's not all the U.S. taxpayers are funding. We're also funding Iran's military expansion, and that was thanks to the failed deal that was the Iran nuclear agreement. So this is $1.7 billion that the U.S. Treasury transferred to Iran's central bank in January. They transferred it during a prisoner swap and as well the implementation of last year's nuclear deal. And they kept saying, it was unclear what Iran's government's going to do with this money. But now we know that they have approved it. Iran's central bank has approved it to transfer to the military. So there you go. That's your taxpayer money. As Trump would say, it's a bad deal. Now, is it going to be any different under Hillary Clinton? I don't know. She's already admitted to faulty bookkeeping at her foundation. This was after a really hard-hitting interview by Anderson CIA Cooper, who asked her, about the fact that her foundation hasn't been wholly transparent, that they've obviously raised huge sums of money from foreign donors. And she said, have there been some instances that slipped through the cracks? Yes, but overwhelmingly, anything that they've disclosed everything else. So he gave her basically several minutes to just brag about how great her foundation is and how nothing untoward has happened. So now the mainstream media can say, well, we talked about her foundation. We covered it with her. And Clinton herself said that no improprieties were found. Case closed. We don't need to talk about the Clinton. Now let's get back to the Trump University or whatever new scandal they can come up with. And now President Obama has finally come out and endorsed Hillary Clinton. But what did President Selfie Stick have to say about Donald Trump?
I'm sure they're going to have a conversation.
Is he ever going to drop out? Or he's just going to stay in? And it's like,
yeah, I'm going to be talking tomorrow. He's going to be coming to the White House. And the main role I'm going to be playing in this process is to remind the American people that this is a serious job. This is not reality TV.
This is coming from the president, who cannot wait to be an ESPN correspondent. He previously appeared on a Slow Jam skit with Fallon. He's been a guest on Jimmy Kimmel Live, The Late Show with David Letterman, The Daily Show, The Colbert Report. And last December, speaking about reality TV, he made headlines when he appeared on NBC's Survival Show, a reality TV show, Running Wild with Bear Grylls. Like, I can guarantee Obama has probably tried to push getting his own reality TV show, but he wants to call out Donald Trump. Now, despite the media witch hunt, we're getting reports out of big data that Latino support for Trump is actually on the rise at 37%. And so you compare that with Latino support for Hillary Clinton, which is at 41%. It's very kind of neck and neck. And now MSNBC, they had the editor-in-chief of Esquire magazine on the show, and they were pretty shocked to find out that border residents wanted a wall. Now, this was Esquire. They recently sent a liberal journalist to the U.S.-Mexico border to find out what people think about the proposed wall. And he said, two things were said, whether they were Hispanic, Anglo, Democrat, Republican, uncommitted, clueless, whatever. They said, we want a wall, yet we want it married with compassion toward the people that we're trying to keep from jumping over the border. And so then the host said, well, this is just a complete shocker. Oh, my goodness. Most of those Hispanics are first generation and see it as unfair. They came over here the legal way, they became citizens, and now they're having to compete for jobs with those coming across the border on a daily basis. Have we not been saying this all along? So even with all of the race baiting by the mainstream media, by the presidential candidates themselves, you see that the people are intelligent enough to see through all of that and see what's really happening there, that they can still see the truth and that this is a big deal. Why is it racist now, though? Because you know what? Hillary Clinton actually called for border walls and deportation in 2006.
Mexico is such an important problem. Mexican government's policies are pushing migration north. There isn't any sensible approach except to do what we need to do simultaneously, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places, and we need to have tougher employer sanctions, and we need to try to incentivize Mexico to do more. If they've committed transgressions of whatever kind, they should be obviously deported.
Now, a lot of people were surprised to see Bernie Sanders meeting with President Obama, kind of making jokes like this will be the only time he gets to see inside of the Oval Office. But now here's Joe Biggs with some unconfirmed reports of just what happened in that meeting.
Joe Biggs here with INFOWARS.com. Now, we know that Bernie Sanders actually flew to D.C. and met with President Barack Obama. And now I have a source on the inside of Bernie Sanders' campaign who just sent me this message. It says it's confirmed that Bernie was offered VP from President Obama and turned it down because he wants Debbie Wasserman fired. Obama wouldn't do it, so Bernie is going to continue his campaign. He's very upset about the DNC turning on him, and that is basically the information we have right now. So that's pretty big. And if you don't know who Debbie Wasserman is, she is basically the head of the DNC. So this is something that's happening now. We're going to keep an eye on it. Like I said, this is a source that I know that relayed this information to me. And as we get updates, we'll bring them to you. So stay tuned to InfoWars.com. Make sure you go to the Alex Jones channel on YouTube and our InfoWars social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter. This has been Joe Biggs with InfoWars.com.
Social media posts generating controversy is nothing new, but the reasoning behind this one in particular is something unusual. Valedictorian, 4.5 GPA, full tuition paid for at UT, 13 cords and medals, nice legs, and oh, I'm undocumented. Now, if you're not aware, the University of Texas does have a program to where undocumented immigrants can come in and receive in-state tuition. By comparison, I was born and raised in Oklahoma. Had I come here right after high school, I would have to pay out-of-state tuition. But I don't think that applies to this young lady as many people are insinuated. I think she got a scholarship to UT because she has a 4.5 GPA and also 13 cords and medals. I'm sure that debate will continue long past me, but I'd rather use this opportunity to talk about a different topic, and that is the political correctness when you reference people who come to this country undocumented, illegally, or whatever the politically correct term may be. And I hear this argument a lot that no person is illegal. And when I talk about illegal immigration, I'm not saying that a human being is illegal. I'm saying, did you enter the country legally? Example, I recently went outside the country, off the continent, as a matter of fact, and even though I had my documents, I had a passport, I had my visa, I had my bags checked by TSA or whatever their equivalent was, I got my pat downs and all that. With all that said, had I walked out of that airport, skipped customs, and went out to the street, I would have committed a crime and entered that country, here comes that trigger word, illegally. Same thing if you did not go through the border checkpoint. Did you go through customs, yes or no? Did you go through the border checkpoint, yes or no? Now notice when I said that it had nothing to do with race, religion, why you're there, how long you're staying, or anything like that. Did you go through the proper checkpoints, yes or no? And I just think it's a good opportunity to bring that out. With this young lady's 4.5 GPA and 13 cords, I'm sure she'll be a great asset to the University of Texas, and regardless of whether she stays here, if she goes someplace else, I think she'd be an asset there as well. You can find more reports on InfoWars.com.
The perfect storm is brewing. Obama's last stand as the Zelenskyite community organizer-in-chief has a finger on the trigger of mass unrest. When Obama took office in 2008, 28.2 million Americans were receiving welfare benefits. That number has grown to roughly 45 million under the only president in history to not see 1 year of 3% GDP growth.
Then there's millions of others that are on state different food assistance programs. So it's 101 million. 101 million get food aid from federal government, outnumber full-time private sector workers. And that's a Department of Agriculture estimate that CNS News reported on. How's that sound? Boy, that sounds like land of the free, home of the brave to me. And all these people are being taught, a guy driving a nice car, somebody that has a nice house, they're rich and they stole it from you.
Earlier this year, it was widely reported that possibly up to 1 million of the country's poorest welfare recipients would lose their benefits under a welfare policy signed, sealed, and delivered by none other than Bill Clinton. The Fiscal Times reports, those affected are people aged 18 to 49 who aren't disabled or raising minor children. Most of them live a subsistence existence, scraping by with the help of government and charitable organizations and low-income jobs, although college students are also eligible. The landmark 1996 bipartisan welfare reform law crafted by a Republican Congress and signed by Democratic President Bill Clinton limited benefits for this group to just 3 months in any 36-month period unless they were employed or in a work training program. Of course, that was pre-Obama phone Obamacare. Here we are 20 years later and those chickens have come home to roost. as the government has reportedly neglected to pay the EBT benefits for 8 days. Michael Snyder of the Economic